with his time. And we'll go ahead and start getting this handshake going, which will take about 2 minutes, and we'll get into the conversation here. Finally getting this efficient, everyone. I'm not in a panic like in the past. And we appreciate your understanding and patience as we have this very dynamic conversation. Okay. And here we go, everyone. So we're getting set up for the Facebook, and we'll have one more connection to go, and we will start the conversation. And for those who are now joining us, you are with us live with Senior Chief author of the books Unbreakable and Three Simple Things, Navy SEAL of 23 years, and a true glutton for punishment because he loved to do professional adventure racing, Mr. Tom Shea, Senior Chief Tom Shea. We're honored to have you here with us, Tom, and we're very grateful. All the streaming is now connected. I have mastered technology for someone who doesn't know technology. I'm quite proud. So Tom, I always love to start off with a brief introduction, and please correct me where I'm wrong. Tom was a West Pointer who decided he had better things to do than to finish up at West Point, and was a English major, which I assume was helpful for your two books, Three Simple Things and Unbreakable, and then graduated with a degree in exercise physiology, if I'm not mistaken, from Ball State.
Yep.
And it took you 5 go-arounds to decide, well, maybe this 5th try I'll make it, and I just like to punish myself, and I'll be a SEAL, and so I'll go through the 5th time. And you're the only guy who's ever done that, right? Has gone 5
Yeah,
times.
they don't allow it. So when I came in the teams in the early 90s, they were undermanned, and so they were looking for people to fill all the spots that they had, and now they're overmanned, so they'll never allow anybody to go through 5 hell weeks again.
Yeah. And rumor has it, from obviously your book, that you're in line at Starbucks. Your now wife, Stacy, is in front of you, and she orders, and your brilliant pickup line was, what again?
Well, so you got to set it up a little better. I had gotten divorced about a year before that, and I was on the tail end of being an instructor in BUDS training or SEAL training. And I don't think I really wanted the punishment of another marriage. And I had committed that I was not going to take myself down that route again. And so I saw a gorgeous woman in front of me who ordered a coffee, a large coffee with 4 shots of espresso. And I just looked at her back and said, man, that's going to get hair on your back. And so 9 months later, we were married. So, hey, it works. That stuff works.
I'm noting that right now. Starbucks line. Try the. Okay, great. And you and I have a similar background of adventure racing. I always think that there's a lot that can be learned from brutal racing. Mm-hmm. What are some things that you learn from the tough world of nonstop, multi-day team competition that you've applied in your life?
Gosh, the list is so long. I got into it because I could navigate. I was still at SEAL Team 2, and a Australian team had lost their navigator, and I'd known them, and they called me up and wanted me to come and run the Southern Traverse with them. And I didn't know anything about that. I don't think I'd ever run more than 14 miles ever. And I wasn't good on the bike at all, meaning that I probably rode a stationary bike prior to committing to going to an adventure race. So I took on the ownership of being the lead navigator. and then the world hits you in the face. Meaning you can plan everything out, and then you show up, and then everything falls apart. Which I think is the greatest leadership takeaway from adventure racing, is that your plan lasts about as long as it takes to write it down or even talk about it, and then you got to get busy doing really simple things, but you can't even figure out how to do the simple things anymore because you're so exhausted and tired. So that the first thing I think that I've been able to take on into the world of being a SEAL, and also the executive training space, is that plans don't last very long, and you have to adapt, and you have to learn to work really well with other people.
I think that's so very applicable today. That's one of my big question areas, and I recall you mentioning in one of your books that SEALs, you plan, and it works great until you get off the helicopter.
Yeah,
and then the plan changes.
Sometimes it doesn't even last that long. But I'd never, I'd seen some combat before I did the Southern Traverse, and then I ended up doing probably 10 multi-day races, from Eco Challenge to Primal Quest, and Four Winds was another one, and some other ones that I just can't remember because they were so bad. And what I learned is that it never goes very well. And what do you do with that? So if you don't learn that, then you're kind of stuffed throughout life. Like, life doesn't go very well, but you got to keep doing really simple things and interact with people that you may not even like. On day 3, you don't like anybody, and it was a weird condition to be in as a professional SEAL, going down to work with people I'd never worked with, and then come to find out simple things make all the difference.
What are some of the simple things to you that make a big difference? And folks, by the way, one of Tom's recent books is 3 Simple Things, and I recommend that and Unbreakable. What are some of those simple things, Tom?
Oh gosh, the first one is, it's hard. It's simple but hard. And when you're working on a team, the hardest thing to do is listen to other people, especially when you think you know what you're talking about. And as a leader or lead navigator, I was really clear where we were, but I never listened to what the team had to say about where we were going. And that the simple aspect of listening has taken from adventure racing into the SEAL teams, and then taking it into the business space, has probably made a bigger difference to me and to the leaders I train than teaching them anything else. Is just listen.
And today, to say that whatever plan you make as a business person or as a family, you name it, you're for your summer vacation, anything right now in our country, whatever plans you make, we are less in control. We have less data points that we can stick to. How do people take so much unknown and know their plan's going to change in their life today with all the COVID craziness?
Man, these are PhD level questions, my friend.
You're a PhD level guy.
The answer uncomplicated. I don't think it really matters what the world is giving you. Like, it doesn't really matter that the world is shut down. If you're that ill prepared for life that when the electricity goes off, you have no idea what to do, it's a hard condition to even teach somebody something else. So maybe, just maybe, it's possible to consider this fact. And the fact is, you're actually in a lot of control in your life. You can control a great many things. And I break it down into 5 areas, not intentionally trying to steal the conversation, but the question begs a better answer. There are 5 areas of everybody's life that you actually have a lot of control on. And the first area is your health. By the way, you're in control of a lot of things regarding your physical abilities. The other one is your ability to learn, which is a second area. The third area is your ability to get paid for the work that you do, or call it wealth. And the fourth area of life are the relationships you have. And the fifth one is your spiritual, derivative or connections that you can have. In those 5 areas, you have major control of a lot of things. So it doesn't really matter that there's a new virus. By the way, there's tons of viruses out there, except that the world is really concentrated on this. And then you add politics and a new election cycle to it, and it changes the dynamics. But so the COVID's out there, you can still work out, but people forget to do the simple things in those areas. So people are emotionally reactive, which is the harbinger of death, and they lose focus on the simple things that they can do in all those areas. And if you learn to look at those areas as things that you can control, you can actually control the external environment really well. And I tried to make that simple. It's a complex conversation.
I appreciate that, Tom. One of the things you've discussed in the past is the concept of failing in the middle versus failing in the beginning. Can you explain that a little bit more for folks?
I think there are 5, not intentionally that there's 5 areas. There's 5 areas where people fail regarding anything they do. One is people fail or give up before they start. The other one is, the second area is they give up right after they start. Like they try to go do an adventure race and they quit on day 1, which is tragic. And then the third area is in the middle. The fourth area is right close to the end. And it's really preeminent in adventure racing is there are a lot of teams that quit in the last 1/8 of the races, which is also tragic. And then after people do something difficult, they quit on themselves, never wanting to do something difficult again. So those 5 areas are called where people fail or where people quit. But failing in the middle is a tragic indication of most people fail in the middle. They try, they get involved in it. Things don't go well. They don't get support. Their body hurts, and they literally give up or fail in the middle of doing something. Like they'll quit on the middle of an uphill, or they'll quit on the middle of a downhill, or they'll quit when something seems, if it's a 50-mile race. I don't know if you've done ultramarathon running, which is, I think, a great replacement for adventure racing, is it feels the same to me, is in the middle, you just cannot fathom running another 50 miles. You're like, this is crazy. I'm not even halfway through. And then the mind unravels because it can't contemplate doing more and more and more and more and more and feeling the same bad experience. But people quit in the middle of literally everything they do. 80% of the people quit in the middle. And that's tragic.
A lot of what you discuss is mindset.
Yes.
And when you start telling yourself it's time to quit, and obviously quitting in the middle, talk to us a little bit about the mindset as it relates to quitting and failure and going on.
Gosh, the mindset. Often you can't separate the mind from the experience of the visceral experience that people are going through. And people try to separate it. So from adventure racing, the body is enduring terrible conditions. Whether you're freezing and still having to walk, you have blisters, you have chafing, You have the inner dynamics between people on a team when they're exhausted and not really interested in it anymore. And then the mind is dealing in terms of all this data that it's getting. So it's hard for me. I don't try to separate mindset from action. And what I do know is that the mind is always wanting a way out of what it's experiencing. And you have to actually train it to seek a way back into the experience. Like people always want to withdraw from pain. That's how you look. That's how most people look at the mind. And from confrontation with somebody, and it's not going well, the mind wants to seek a way out of it because it's tough to deal with. But the great thing that I'd learned either through adventure racing or marathon running or ultra marathon running or even in combat is what you should do most of the time in training is teach yourself a mindset, if you will, to find a way back into the experience that you're having. You know, like whether you're biking like you did, you're blown out of the back of the peloton. The mind doesn't want to do it anymore because it knows it's going to a Herculean effort to get back into the back. But you have to teach it to do it all the time. Like, don't ever let yourself in training have a good mental experience. Train to do things when they're hard. Don't go out and do things when it's sunny. Do it when it's difficult in a rainy situation or the conditions are bad, because you let your mind try to find a way back in. And that is it's kind of the lost art of, being great, is try to get yourself mentally in a condition where it doesn't want to play, and then teach it to find a way back into the experience.
Thank you. You've discussed in the past that as both a SEAL instructor and when you're going through the SEAL program, they don't let you win. That's right. Just not an option. And winning is something you do in battles, what you discuss. Can you explain a little bit more about that and how relevant that is right now?
Some gentlemen that created the SEAL program before it was called SEAL in World War II was where the program was created. And they'd had so much combat experience, they realized that if you allow people to constantly win in training, like for instance, go do a workout and feel good at the end where your body didn't fail. And they realized that through the reality called things don't ever really go that well. And until you constantly face things not going well, it's a rough condition. So in SEAL training, they never let you ever do well. They never let you win anything that you're doing, from shooting to tactics to getting the whole troop together and doing training engagements. And in the middle of something, if it's going well, the staff will make it go sideways, so that you're constantly adapting and adapting. And the leader gets killed in training. How do you deal with that? What happens if the helo doesn't come and pick you up? Good, you're walking out 10 miles. And they'll do that in training. Well, we didn't plan on that. Okay, so plan on it now. You have to walk 10 miles undetected through some, state in the United States, and you somebody and you can't steal anything. How do you get to the next target when it wasn't a part of the plan? And so what that does to the individuals that are in the SEAL teams is they're always adapting, and they're never anticipating that there's going to be a victory. So by the time you go over into combat, victory happens so quickly, you don't even know what to do with it. Oh my God, we won. That was my first experience of combat. Well, that didn't take very long. It's over immediately. Like, dead people are usually the indicator that things are over and you don't have to worry anymore. And I'd never had the experience of winning in the SEAL teams until you actually go to combat and it's your first experience of that you can win.
Mhm.
I don't know if that was
Uh,
helpful.
it was helpful. The option to quit in the wandering mind, these 80% of people in the middle, what are the tactics and tricks when the mind wants to quit to get back on track?
Yeah, I probably wouldn't have been able to answer that, but when I retired, I started to put on a what I call a 24-hour challenge. And we not trying to sell it, but I'm trying to explain how I answer that question. So for 24 hours, we're going to walk, and every hour stop for 10 minutes. And you get to see how the brain unravels. It literally unravels. And it's not a fast pace. We walk at probably 2.3 miles per hour. And we explore the conversation of what is in the way of you being successful in life. So what I found from doing that experience is the mind is not really interested in a goal. It literally doesn't care about the end goal. The human brain doesn't care about anything other than the next 5 steps that it perceives in front of it. But you can't get it to think in the order of what's immediate, what's right here in front of you, and what's available in front of you until it stops dealing with how to get out of it. And in that 24-hour challenge, in the last 3 hours, everybody is no longer concerned with anything but right now. So how you create a condition mentally is stop reacting to anything that's not immediately right in front of you. Let the past go very quickly because it really isn't important anymore. And stop being so concerned with how you're going to get the next 10 days done or the next 10 miles done. Literally get the next 2 steps, like go to the next tree. When it starts doing that, it actually performs 25% better at a time when it can't. Like in the end of a race, you can't perform better. It's normally because your mind is so checked out that your neurons aren't even firing that well. And how that transcends into the space of life is when you're really present, you actually don't want to quit anymore because you're not concerned. I just need to make this next step, and then the next one, and then the next one. Well, that was the loss. Okay, good. We screwed that last thing up. Take the next step, take the next step. And as long as you can keep doing that, big things are not insurmountable, and screwing things up doesn't really matter anymore. And that condition, I think, is one of the most important conditions to be in life. Is right now matters a hell of a lot more than the future or the past.
Wow, I like that. Thank you. Some things that I've heard you mentioned in the past, and by the way, it's hard to find a lot of articles on you. You're a hard guy to research. They're there.
It's probably because I until the past year it was just me, and then I partnered with another leader of an industry who has a big social media team, and I think they're trying to make this ugly thing pretty in the social media space.
Fair enough. Anything is possible. I've heard you say that. Yeah. For people out there dealing with trying to keep their business afloat, and one of your roles is obviously you also buy distressed companies and you consult for people about leadership. Getting the message anything is possible across the finish line in their head right now can be a daunting task. How do you help people recognize that anything really is possible?
Yeah, the distressed asset is really intriguing to me because in working with some operators from private equity companies, I got and also being a SEAL, everything is a distress problem as a SEAL. How to convert that into the business space was interesting. And the only people that were doing that relatively well were private equity that purchase and then operate a company out of a distressed condition. And now during this shutdown, national shutdown, everybody's in distress. The funny thing about distressed asset, purchasing and then graduating to non-distressed and then selling at a higher value is that's very possible right now as a nation. Because how distressed asset management looks at an organization is they look at the simple things that the company should be doing that they're not doing. From the leader, starts at the leader and goes down to the receptionist. So you go in and you take a look at, like, even everybody listening, take an inventory of the things that you should be doing that you're not doing, and then only do those. So what you do in a distressed takeover is you get rid of all the things that are literally not working and have no value. So most companies have 45% of their company that has no value. People are not doing activity that's relative to the growth of the company. And some of the business practices are not, like, lethally moving the needle in a growth pattern. So take the non-emotional approach to your life and go, what is basic and I should be doing every single day? And what are the things that really make no difference, but I'm spending a lot of time doing them? And then getting rid of everything that has no value in your life. Like, if it has no value, don't spend any time on it. And everybody right now is what I've known in the past 4 months since this shutdown really hit, is people are doing a lot of things that have no value to them. Like, worry has no value. And that's how I would look at it, is take a really earnest look at the areas of your life that are of value to you and get back to very simple things, which is the intent of writing 3 Simple Things. Is there are simple things that make a profound difference. And if you do them, your growth curve is always upward. And it doesn't matter what the world shows you, is if you do simple things more than anybody else, you win. And having interviewed a lot of professional athletes, I find out that they only do simple things, and they don't hack anything. And they don't spend time doing things that are not relative to the thing that they're really interested in getting better. So, bikers don't drink a lot of alcohol. And there are some people that spend a lot of time trying to get good at something, but then they have 80% of their effort spent killing it off. Mm-hmm. And taking that really honest look is so hard to do as a human being. Like, where am I spending my money? Does that make a difference? Then stop doing it. It's a hard question for people to answer to themselves.
Thank you. I like that idea quite a bit. Honoring your word. That is something from what I understand, you've pounded it in the heads of your children, those around you, those who follow you. And I think now, as always, honoring your word is critical. Can you cover that a little more with us?
Yeah, I found that there's 2 foundational principles for human beings. Genetics has no value in these principles. Like, who you were born, how you were born, where you were born, your education really is not a foundational aspect of being a human being. The first one that I found to be the key principle of growth or success is to what I call honor your word. That is, when you say something, have that be true for you. And that's very rare. Like, make a promise and keep it. Boy, that sounds simple, but it's very difficult for human beings to do that. Be the person that you say you are, and don't ever break that train of events. And the second key principle to being a human or being successful is you cannot quit. Once you make an agreement to do something, don't honor your excuses, honor your commitment until that happens. The question isn't how long is it going to take? The question is, or the answer to that question is, it takes as long as it takes.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can honor your word and never give up on that, come to find out, things work out really well.
And part of your honoring of your word was the regular conversation you had with your wife, your partner in life, Stacy, of, and I hope I'm getting this right. Don't fear dying. We need you. Come back. And I'm sorry for paraphrasing. Can you go a little bit more into that commitment and honoring your word there?
Yeah. So the night before I went to Afghanistan in 2009, before we flew out on the aircraft that took us there, even though it was a really tense time, it was probably more tense for me than it was for Stacy, because I didn't really have a clear indication that I was going to return. And so in that level of tension, Stacy literally grabbed my face and said, "Don't fear dying. It makes you weak, and fight your way back to us." And that condition of being, the father, husband who would do whatever it takes to come home was and still is a very emotional state of, can you imagine either being that person or having a wife or husband that demands you not be afraid and to fight your way back? And that it really it came up 3 months into Afghanistan, where I'd been knocked down or sort of blown up by an RPG, and I was laying on the ground, and I thought it was over because I couldn't get my body to respond. My eyes were open and I could hear, but I couldn't get the old body to move. And in that tragic moment, all I heard in my head was Stacy repeating that to me. And I don't know if it quite answers the question that you asked, but I call it a tasking from somebody who's committed. And that still is her tasking. Not in combat, but it's still the tasking that resounds itself.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Tell us a little bit about the role of family and the partnership between husband and wife as it drives you forward in life, and where people need to be thinking.
So the 5 areas that I said before, relationship is an area. I don't think it's it's singularly more important than any other. I don't think the 5 areas have any order of precedence. What I have found is that when your key relationships that you're in could be a lover, but a key relationship with a wife, husband, partner, lover, whatever, when that is not on point, when it's not two people committed to each other, your ability to produce success in the other 4 areas diminishes very rapidly. Like you're less a human being or less capable because you're not in a key relationship. And I saw that true in the SEAL teams, guys who were in the middle of a bad relationship. We wouldn't even let them come into combat, because you will get your buddy injured or you will get yourself killed, because you never really show up at 100%. In the business world, it's an odd thing to say this, is that's why most of the executives bring me in to train them, is because they know how to make money, but their family and their relationship at home is on the brink of collapse. And so they bring in a Navy SEAL to turn around their relationship. And it has the upside to a relationship that is very available at home to an executive is 200% business increase in a year. And I've used this process of 180 executives, and it's always the same end goal or end result of when relationship turns to the positive, the company osmotically produces a 2x result.
Wow. That's stunning to me. I'm not usually caught off guard that much. So the relationship at home you're seeing is directly tied to the success of the business and the business leader.
100%. 100%.
Where
In 15 minutes, I can go into an organization. That's if the executive allows the skirt to be lifted.
Mm-hmm.
If you can get in a frank conversation about the home life, which is very hard. It usually takes me 3 months to be able to be in that relationship conversation. And 3 things are always missing. So more to honor your question. And it goes back to the listening thing. So the 3 simple things that are missing in relationship that literally turn the table everywhere else is I make the executives go through a 21-day challenge to accomplish these 3 simple things in their relationship. And out of 180 plus executives that have tried to do this, and it's simple. After I say it, you're like, oh, that's simple. Try to do it. It's very difficult. So it's normally taken on average 3.5 months to accomplish 21 days straight of doing these things I'm about ready to say. Mm-hmm. So you gotta earmark 30 minutes a day for 21 days. The first 10 minutes of that 30 minutes, you have to listen to your significant other, to what they're committed to doing that day with their life. And then after that 10 minutes is up, you have to have a sharing conversation with your wife, husband, lover about what you're committed to accomplishing that day. No drama, no excuses, straight to the point, like even robotic. These are I'm going to go to the store. I'm going to sweep the whatever. I'm going to take the cat litter out. Whatever you're interested in or committed to accomplishing, it's better categorically if you say, I'm going to go work out. I'm going to try to get 1 more sales, and I'm learning Spanish, like 3 things on point that I'm trying to accomplish today. And then you share those 3 things with your spouse. And then you spend 10 minutes of intimacy with your spouse. It doesn't have to be full bore, if you know what I mean. So 10 minutes of listening, 10 minutes of sharing, and 10 minutes of intimacy. When your relationship can accomplish that, the world opens up to you. And for some reason, it takes 3 months for people to accomplish 21 days straight. And where most people fall apart is on day 10. Day 10 to day 18, they stop doing it, which is why people fall apart in the middle.
Wow.
Doesn't that sound simple?
Yes.
21 days, all you got to do, and you can do it virtually. I hate to say it this way, virtual intimacy has already been proven out, so it's available. And there's all kinds of ways to create that. But I can never get an executive to do that in less than 3 months. And what happens is once they do that, all the drain of energy that is happening at home goes away. And so now the executives at work, they really don't speak like they used to. They actually go into their morning business meeting and listen. and then they speak, and they're on point when they speak. They don't have casual conversations. Even though they seem to matter, it doesn't really matter how people are feeling within your organization if it's not relative to a conversation about moving the needle. And by listening, speaking, and creating culture or intimacy, either at home or in your organization, the meeting doesn't take 4 hours anymore. It's literally 45 minutes. People are productive. They're moving forward with clarity because the leader is on point and doesn't waste time. And it doesn't really take a lot of time to be on point in the relationship. But boy, nobody is ever teaching anybody to how to use relationship as an access to advantage of everywhere else. Like even you, when you're doing adventure racing or biking, or everybody listening, you wouldn't assume that if there's a drain at home when you're not on point, you wouldn't assume that your activity that you're asking yourself to do would diminish. But your brain is still trying to figure out how not to get divorced. Because if it's bad at home, it's trying to, and it tries to escape from that, which drains your neurological pathways, and you're creating kinase, which is a power enzyme, and your ability to replace energy or fat with energy. If your brain's not available because it's draining itself out the back end, trying to understand where it is with the relationship at home, you don't realize why you're not doing well. So what I've seen not only in business is what I do now is, if I make all my clients have a goal that's epic. Most of you literally have to run a marathon if you're going to do a training with me. I don't care if you're 300 pounds. Within the year of training, you're going to run a marathon. So as we step through that, we go through the relationship stuff. Their physical abilities immediately go up, because interesting thing is now the wife and husband are supporting their activity. And that support is paramount. As opposed to, honey, why are you going running again? Or going to run because you can't stand your spouse, which is a weird condition. When you take that away, you create the condition of growth. And I wish I could articulate that better. It takes me a year to figure out how to articulate that.
Well, I think that was tremendous. And one of the things you've mentioned before, Tom, is being normal, or specifically the desire, I should say, to not be normal. What does that mean to you?
Normal is the bell curve, where if you look at a bell curve, you figure out where most of the people are in the world. You could take that normalcy and bell curve analogy into any area. So even biking, the bell curve shows that most people are like a cat 2, cat 3. The reason why they're there is because they're not committed. So normal people are not fully invested into an epic life. So they're satisfied, and satisfaction should never be used in human conversation ever again. It's detrimental. So the normal human being is satisfied with kind of the just so conversation. And it's a travesty to the human condition to reside in the bell curve, because you can't get out of your own way. You can't start something and sustain it. And so the most people that are the 80% find themselves very normal, like a normal life. And after a little bit of leading a normal life, you can't create anything else. You can just regurgitate sameness constantly. And which is tragic. I mean, I could go on for days about the absence of like kill normalcy, just kill it.
Thank you. Your book, Tom, Unbreakable, your first book, which is a bestseller, and I really recommend everyone read both these books and listen to Tom's podcast, Unbreakable Leadership. That book was not designed for public view. It was originally designed as a commitment between you and your wife to give to your children in case you did not make it back from war. Mm-hmm. And goes without saying that we're very, very grateful to you and your brothers who went to war on our behalf for our freedom. And I'm sure you hear thank you often, but I'd like to at least say on behalf of our audience, thank you. That book for your children was the outline of this is how I want you to be. What can parents do in general to raise children to not be normal?
So the book was not literally, I didn't have any intent that anybody else read it. And I didn't have the intent for this reason. I think at 52, I can express it and not feel embarrassed by it. But what happened to me at West Point is I failed out in English. And I'd chosen a lifestyle where I didn't ever have to write or read as a matter of success. And SEALs seem to represent the greatest place in the world where you could not be really intelligent and do really well. And so when Stacy, so what we made the commitment to each other when I went to Afghanistan was to, before every combat engagement, write something to the kids in particular and to her as well, or to Stacy as well, in case you didn't come back from this thing that you're about ready to go on, what I wanted the kids to be able to do, or know about me, or know about themselves, or know about what was possible for them. So after 6 months of actually returning from every combat engagement, and a lot of them were very difficult to return from, but I returned. And so when I got home, Stacy said, why don't we compile that into a manuscript and print some copies out for the family? And I said, send me back into combat. I do not want to sit down and write that out so that's intelligent. And so it took me 9 months to put some kind of English spin on the grunts and the cuss words that I had put into the emails that I had written to the kids. And then I wasn't going to retire, so I was still in for another 3 years at that point. And so it just sat there in a Word document, written in a language that nobody could ever read. And so right before we retired, she got a professional editor to edit it without my knowledge. And once I retired, she put it up on Amazon as a self-published version. But the first 5 copies were called Spartan Wife, where one of the key themes that I wanted the kids to know was that without a powerful woman, men suck. And that was the first chapter, or the first paragraph of the book. And so as it went out, it started to sell. And I said, well, get a professional look at it. So I had a publisher pick it up, and they said, we'd love to pick it up, but what we have to do is re-edit it, change the title. And so they changed the title to Unbreakable, a Navy SEAL's Way of Life, because they thought Spartan Wife would not sell, which I probably agree with. And and it's became an interesting way. So what parenting was the question. kids are resilient. They're designed to be resilient. Everything that you do to raise your kids has to put them in a condition of resilience. They have to fall apart. They have to skin their knee. They have to fail a test. And they have to build themselves back up with your support. The tragedy of parenting now is we don't let our kids fall apart. We take all the growth away from them by giving them things that they always get rewarded from, which it's tragic. And kids obviously want to win all the time, and they want the ice cream bowl every night, and they want a Coca-Cola all the time because it's immediate, positive feedback to what they're experiencing. The greatest gift in the world is a parent who says no more than they say yes. No, you can't do that. You got to actually go earn it. I'm not going to give you $10. You got to go cut the grass, or you got to you got to study for your test. And that is, it's tragic, and it shows up in business all the time. You can see how the executive was raised, and how they raised their own family, and how tragic that is. And I usually don't like to talk about it because it's so controversial, but a hard parent creates great kids.
And we are in a unique environment where I think that's important. One of the things you've mentioned before, Tom, is learn from living in an environment you did not think is possible, living in that environment. And we're living in that environment now as a nation, nowhere near what is unimaginable, what we've gone through. But tell us a little bit more about learning from living in an environment you did not think was possible.
Well, the first environment was that I experienced that was not possible was going back to Hell Week the second time, because it's darn near impossible to get through Hell Week anyway. So SEAL training on average graduates 10%, maybe 15% of the people who are, and everybody falls apart in Hell Week. So Hell Week's just a 5-day, literally an adventure race where you are not in control of anything and you get no sleep, and they berate you, they pound you into hell, and you experience hell. And so going back for me was, it's not possible to do this a second time. But to jump forward, now we're in an environment now as a nation and probably as a world that I would not have predicted in any analysis whatsoever. Like, what happens if nobody can go to work? What happens if there's no school, there's no big events, there's no sporting events anymore? Nobody would have thought about this. This is not a predictive model that was on anybody's radar. So, but we're all in it. We're all in a condition that nobody had thought would ever happen. But what is possible now is you got to get back to the shit that matters. Mm-hmm. Irregardless of you having a job, irregardless of the tragedy that everybody's experiencing, the simple things are what you have to get back to and then never avoid ever again. And that's what I found I was doing in business anyways, just making complex things very simple and then never veering off the simple path. And what I did in Hell Week or SEAL training to get through is show up every day. You got to keep showing up with everything on point. And all those 5 areas of your life, you have to show up every day to. You can't neglect them. So it's tragic that people have lost their jobs. So find another one. Keep coming back to the things that are basic. So there's disparity at home. Good. Listen, share, and have intimacy. And the funny thing in the three simple things in health that literally takes people from couch potato to ultra marathon runner is every day that ends in Y, you have to work out for an hour. You have to work out for an hour. You don't get a choice anymore. It's non-negotiable. And you have to stretch for 20 minutes and you have to drink 10 glasses of water every day. If you actually do that, you become a very gifted athlete in whatever profession. Like you cannot not ride. You have to go out for an hour as a baseline and ride your bike, whether it's stationary. Swimmers, you got to swim for an hour. You got to stretch, which is the tragic thing in health is nobody's flexible anymore. So it's harder to get people to stretch for 20 minutes than it is to get them to work out. And it's literally impossible, like pulling teeth from a bear, to get people to drink 10 glasses of water a day. Like it's not negotiable. What would happen if you actually did those simple things? And 70 executives by doing that have run 50 Ks and never had run before. Not that they're competitive. Competitive is a different conversation. But what would be possible with simplicity as a baseline is extraordinary things happen when you get back to simple things.
Tom, one of the things you've discussed, we keep going back to simple things. How do people recognize when they're in the wrong mindset, they're in a place of fear, all this crap news coming into their head? How do they separate that out and find the simple things? This is and break it apart and tools they use to actually find the simple things.
The key term that you just had there was reactive. How you cut through the gray space. Fear is a horrible reaction to anything. When you know that you're in fear is when you've stopped. Like you're afraid to, like fear literally as emotional response prevents action. So every time you notice that you're not in action on anything simple, it's because you're reacting to a fear mechanism. Like literally the fear of heights will prevent people from going up to a high place. So when you notice that you're afraid is when you have to take action. Like if you're afraid to do something, go do it. Like train yourself to go do it. So we're in the space where fear is being taught. We're so afraid that we're putting on masks. We don't even know if the masks are valid. Maybe they are. I don't know. I have a lot of medical background, and I know this virus doesn't give two shits about the mask because it's so small. It'll penetrate the filter system of a mask. But we now engaged in the learning of fear, and we're afraid. We're afraid to open up our business because we're gonna get shut down. We're afraid to make choices because something is preventing us from doing them. The only recommendation is that eventually you have to take action. And the avoidance of fear is very complicated. But how do you answer that question? It's a tough thing. How do you find the simple? Stop being afraid. Eventually, you're going to have to take action. Like even if you'd fallen off your bike and you'd had a bad road pizza on your side, you have to get back on the bike, and you probably have to go to that same curve that you spilled on and ride it until it just becomes another place on earth that you're not reactive to. That analogy is probably more a better answer. So all the things that you're not in action on, start doing them right now. Like literally, it's better to be in action and doing the things that you know you need to do than to be sitting and waiting and breeding the mindset of fear, which is, it's tragic.
Thank you, Tom. And I really want to be respectful of your time. It's amazing. We've already gone through an hour. This has been a tremendous interview. I just want to end on a couple of things. One more question. You've mentioned thriving in chaos. We're in chaos right now. Where can people, how do people thrive in chaos right now?
Yeah, it's actually the best way to answer that, having been asked it so many times, and maybe I have a better way to answer it now. Chaos is looking at, outside at all the trees and seeing 1,000 trees. That's very chaotic. Like your brain cannot deal with 1,000 data points. But what you know it can do is it can deal with one data point really well. So how you deal with chaos is disregard all of it, the totality, and find one thing that you can take action on. So it's the way of saying that is finding the tree in the forest, or finding the bird in the forest, or looking for a leaf or a branch. So you cut through the chaos of life by finding one thing that you can actually see, engage with, and then you go engage that until it's complete. And then you find the other simple thing or the other one thing in the chaotic experience. The longer you look at chaos, the more disabling it is. So cut through the crap and find one thing that you can take action on until it either falls apart or gets resolved, and then find another thing, and then find another thing. Like literally make one call. You have 1,000 calls that you have to make. Cool, who cares? It's like running 100 miles. You got to run 1 mile at a time. You got to make one transition area. Don't think you have 8 transition areas in a big epic race. You do one section at a time. And because that's what professionals do. They don't care how long it is. They're just doing the next section as best they can. And you'll find that that's what thriving actually is doing one thing that you can do and then completing it, doing another thing that you can do. But when you look at the totality, you're like, nobody can eat an elephant, but you can take a bite of something. And don't worry about how the future is going to play out. It's way too chaotic to be a predictor of the future. But take action and stop worrying about outcome as a totality.
Thank you. Tom, to wrap up, there's a couple of foundations you support, and you have a 24-hour challenge and you have a 48-hour challenge. Let's talk. So what are the foundations you support? If people want to support those foundations, what are they?
You mean ask that differently?
There's some charities that you support
Charities.
With your events that, sorry.
There's one, just because it's probably in my DNA at this point. There's a lot of great charities out there, and I don't dive into a lot of them because I want to know the ins and outs of where the money's going to go. The one that is predominant because of what they actually do with the money is a fund called the SEAL Future Fund. And they give money to, for some reason, combat has a tragic outcome to people that have seen it quite a bit. So all the SEALs that have chronic PTSD or brain explosive trauma or have lost a limb, they pay a lot of money to those people to help them thrive in the life that they're now leading. And so the SEAL Future Fund, to me, is the predominant one right now, where 99% of the money goes to where the money's supposed to go.
Thank you. That's SEAL Future Fund, folks. SEAL. Tom, you're running a 24-hour challenge, and congratulations, you just pulled off a 48-hour challenge too.
Yeah. So the 24-hour challenge is in person. So people come from, we had 3 people come from South Africa that ran a hedge fund down there. And it's a great event, and it's very difficult. It's physically very demanding, emotionally demanding. And I wish that I had not put it on the docket as something that I have to do, because now I've done 32 of them. Like, that's probably not the greatest business model, is to have something difficult twice a year. And but the 48-hour challenge, because the world was in a virtual space and people couldn't come here and train or do an event, we did it virtually, and we had, gosh, 58 people. So every 4 hours on the hour, you have to move or do something athletic. And then every 4 hours after that, we added something new to the pie that we would do every hour. And people really got a lot of value from it. We do it as we actually did it as a mechanism to vet people that were going to work for us, because you can tell a lot about something in 48 hours if you demand something every 4 hours from them.
Wow.
And it was a beautiful vetting, because you can weed out everybody who's not conducive to your organization in 2 days. Like, it's the greatest way to onboard somebody before you pay them anything. So we were doing that as a vetting process, and then we as an organization decided to open it up to everybody else. And but it's a beautiful way to figure out what's really going on with you as a human and what's possible. And we ended up, not a lot of people in the world have walked for 48 miles. And it's a big task. However, it's only an hour of movement. And walking 4 miles and then sleeping for 3 hours is not that difficult. But when you look back at all the things that we did in that 48-hour period of time, it's very transformational. So we work in all those 5 areas that I talked about. And you actually have to do wealth growth in that 2 days as well. And you have to do relationship work in that 2 days as well. Most people start out alone, and then the second day, their family has joined them every 4 hours.
Oh, that's fantastic. Tom, if people want to find you, reach out to you on social media, online, not your email address, other methods for people to be able to stay in touch with you, reach out to you, what are they?
Unbreakableleadership.com is our website. And then on social media and on Twitter and LinkedIn, and I think also Instagram, Tom Shea is where everybody can reach out to me. I hate to be responsive, but I tend to be way too responsive on there. I should have somebody else do it. That's the business model, but I like the interaction with people who are committed.
Good. And folks, that's spelled THOMSHEA, and we'll be putting that out on the show notes. Tom, any closing thoughts for folks to think about, or action items you want people to think through on their way out, and as we sign off?
My greatest thing that I could say to anybody is make things simpler than you think possible. And how I look at what I call the 3 simple things, and I'm just gonna, because everybody tells me I have to sell the book, so I'm gonna say something about it. 3 simple things: leading during chaos. It's all, Amazon or wherever you can buy it. And what I found that is preeminent about greatness is do one thing that's offensive every day. Like work out, find a new client, do something that's offensive. Do something that's protective or defensive every day. And the third thing that you can do every day is consider what the future may be like for you. So offense, defense, or strategic, very simple things. They're not time-sucking black holes. Do simplicity in the face of complexity, and avoid hacking anything ever again for the rest of your life. Keep things very simple, and then what becomes possible is literally unimaginable.
Wow. Tom, thank you very much. Hope to see you out in Colorado. We'll be out in Greenville, but who knows when, for a meeting eventually one day.
Good.
Come climb some mountains out with us in Colorado, and hopefully see you on the trails. Thank
But
you for your time.
thanks, Jason.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Have
you.
a great day, Tom. Take
Yep.
care. Bye-bye.